All right, we ready to start?
Ready?
I get the fun topic of septic addendums. I just want to point out, everybody, last month Russ taught the contingency, and I get septic. Do you all see something weird about that? Thanks, Tay.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, move on.
Yeah.
So we have the 22S, which is kind of that general addendum for every place. But we also want to remember that there are county-specific addendums. We're going to talk mostly about King County, but be aware there's one for Thurston, there's one for Pierce, there's one for Kitsap. So you always want to use the one that is appropriate for the county that you're in. Sorry, I'm looking back. We had printer issues. All right, so everybody here knows how a septic works, right? Please bear with me. I normally do new crews, so I'm never sure how much people know. It's got a tank. Sometimes it has multiple tanks feeding into a drain field, right? Solids go to the bottom, oils and fats go to the top, and it moves through the system. It's pretty simple. OSS, on-site sewage system. So we're going to spend our time today going through the 22S for King County. And it's not a complicated form. It's relatively simple. The issue really is that how many have sold a house with a septic? Okay, by the end I'm going to ask how many of you have gone through the process correctly. Because I own a house with a septic. I did not go through the process correctly.
Could I ask what, if we're
Sure.
going to go through the septic in King County, how come we're not using the S King? Why are we going through the 22S?
Well, if you flip to the second
Okay,
page,
that's what we're doing,
Yep.
okay.
I just wanted you to know that this is kind of your default
Okay,
everywhere,
Okay.
but use county specific, and
Got it.
because we're in King County, we're going to do King County.
okay.
All right, pretty simple. What type of system is it? It's served by a private septic system, served by a shared septic system, or, and this is unique to King County, not served by an approved public or private sewer system. So really, you're just disclosing, what is it? How is it served? Simple. Seller's representation. Seller represents, to the best of seller's knowledge, the on-site sewer serving the property, A, does not require repair, other than the pumping and normal maintenance, B, does not currently violate any applicable laws, state and federal laws, standards, and regulations, and C, has no material defects. Simple, right? Seller is representing that this is in good working order. No big deal. This section 3 is part of the King County addendum, not part of other addendums. King County is the most restrictive addendum when you're looking at these. So King County's health code, King County Board of Health Code, seller will retain a licensed on-site system maintainer, an OSM, to prepare a monitoring and performance inspection report of the OSS, of the on-site sewage, and to complete the other requirements of the health code. As soon as the OSM completes the requirements of the health code, seller shall deliver to buyer a copy of the operation and maintenance report and a copy of the maintenance records for the OSS if available. So most of us have seen that King County Health Department document where it states whether or not the septic is in good working order. If you haven't and you have a client purchasing one, that is something that the listing agent will provide to you so that you can see that it is in good working order. All right. Operation and maintenance report contingency. The buyer's obligations under this agreement are contingent on the buyer's approval of the operation and maintenance report. So sometimes you might get that back and there's baffles are broken and those need to be repaired. So it's disapproved or it has failed. So your buyer gets to read through and make sure that they're approving this. This contingency shall be deemed waived unless buyer gives notice of the disapproval of the operation and maintenance report within 5 days. This 5 days is not consistent across all the addendums. Some days, some addendums show 3 days, some show 5, some show 10. So just be conscious of what addendum you're utilizing and what county. After receipt of the operation maintenance report, if buyer gives timely notice of disapproval, the agreement shall terminate and earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. We're all agreed. All right. C, on-site sewage system operations and maintenance requirements. Seller shall deliver to buyer a seller's notice of on-site sewage operation and maintenance requirements, which shall be recorded before closing. We're going to come back to that on a different document. Buyer shall deliver to seller on or before closing a buyer's declaration of receipt. We're going to come back to that. Buyer's declaration of receipt of copy of notice of on-site sewage system operation and maintenance requirements. In addition, buyer shall pay the operation and maintenance program fee as set forth in the applicable fee schedule. So there's two documents that they're talking about out here. Has anyone used either of those two documents? Ever heard of one of those two documents? All right. So we're going to come back. We have them in here. We're going to finish this form. Inspection and pumping contingency. This is pretty consistent across the board. If checked, seller shall have the on-site sewage inspected, and if the inspector determines necessary, pumped by an OSS service company at seller's expense. Seller shall provide buyer with a copy of the inspection report within, default is 15 days. This, again, this number is not consistent. Some counties it's 10, some counties it's 20. King County it's 15. Of mutual acceptance. If seller had the OSS inspected and if necessary pumped within, King County 6 months, the default is 12 months. So if you're in King County, you're talking to a seller, there's a lot of these in Burien and Normandy Park, just make sure you're aware 6 months, not the 12 months that most of us usually think about. Of mutual acceptance by the OSS service company, and seller provides buyer with written evidence thereof, including an inspection report. Seller shall have no obligation to inspect and pump the system unless otherwise required by buyer's lender. Right? It's all simple. The agreement's conditioned on the buyer's approval of the inspection report from the OSS service company. The contingency shall be deemed waived unless buyer gives notice of disapproval of the inspection report within 5 days after receipt of the inspection report. If buyer gives timely notice of disapproval, the agreement shall terminate and earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. All simple. Buyer's right to attend, consistent across the board. If checked, the seller has not already conducted the inspection, buyer shall have the right to observe the inspection. Seller shall provide buyer with 3 days notice of date and time of the inspection. Again, that's consistent across the board. The advisory notice only in King County. The OSS should not be pumped before the operation and maintenance report is performed by the on-site maintainer as required by the health code. The operation and maintenance report requires that the system be observed before it's pumped. Okay, simple form, right? We've gone through that, we've knocked it, we know what we're doing. Here's where I think most of us fall down. The next page over. This is the Form 22U. This is the seller disclosing to King County whether or not the property has a septic system on it. The seller has to do this prior to closing. This is not something done by escrow at closing. It has to be done prior. However, we look at the title report. If you look at where the taxes are on the title report, you look right above there. If this document has already been recorded, it will be noted there on the title report. It will state that there is a septic system on this property. This does not have to be redone by every seller. It has to be done once. So if it's there, you can ignore this form. If it is not there, so when you order preliminary title and it's not there, you're going to give this form to your seller who's going to fill it out. The grantee in this case, it states the public because we're not doing it for a specific buyer, we're doing it for the public knowledge. Your client will fill this out and they will have to get it recorded. Questions? All right, has anyone done this?
No, on the title report, you said above what?
The taxes, you know where you can see whether or not they've paid their property
Okay.
taxes?
Okay.
It's listed right up there above that.
All right.
How often do you see that it's been on title?
I'm sorry?
How often do you see that it's on title? Any idea, like 10% of the time?
For us old people who have been around a long time, there was a period in probably about 2010 where there was a big push to get this done, and I think it's because King County was unaware of what was out there. And so we were seeing that quite a bit. So I'd say now it's probably a 60-40. You might see it 60% of the time and not see it 40% of the time. The challenge is we don't know to look for it. And if we're selling a property with a septic, we need to start looking for it. Okay, so the next document, I'm not going to go through the 22U step by step. This is something you would hand to your client, have your client fill out. It would be notarized, it would be recorded. This next one is the 22V. Remember we talked about in the first, that the 22S King, it says that the buyer is acknowledging receipt. Has anyone ever done that? Yeah, I hadn't either. Okay. This is the document that you utilize. It's the 22V, like Victor. It's the form that your buyer, are you all not?
Yeah.
Buyer's declaration of receipt of a copy of the on-site sewage system operation and maintenance requirements. So your client is simply saying, pursuant to that health code of King County, the on-site sewage regulations, buyer, I declare that the buyer received a copy of the seller's notice of the on-site sewage system, operation, and maintenance requirements. The notice dated, whatever date it is, if it's already in title, then it's noted that date. And the document number of the official records of the King County, State of Washington. Buyer agrees, or buyer shall pay the operation and maintenance program fee as set forth in King County's fee schedule, as the fee may amend from time to time. I just checked yesterday, it's approximately $40. And if this document is provided to escrow, escrow can collect that $40. Escrow is not going to chase down your client to try to collect this. It's not a requirement for them to do this. However, what tends to happen is if this wasn't done, this form may be asked for after closing, and certainly the fee will be required by the buyer after closing. So we don't want our buyer in this new house for a month and all of a sudden they get this bill for $40 that they know nothing about. And this also alleviates, heaven forbid, any confusion on whether or not the property has septic or doesn't have septic, right? Because that would be horrific. All right. Any questions on any of that?
Sorry, the fee is just a one, how often is that?
It's a one-time fee, but for every new buyer because it's an education fee. The fee to record it on title is a one-time fee, one time ever, because once it's on title, it'll stay on title. And that's about a $200 fee. I think it was $188 when I looked it up.
So the $40 fee is for every new buyer?
Every new buyer, yes. It is an education fee to King County. Now, FHA loans and VA loans are going to require a copy of the certification, that health document, stating that it's in good working order. Conventional, it is not a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac requirement. However, most lenders have an overlay on their loans and will require it. So if you're not providing it to the lender on your conventional buyers, be aware that more than likely the lender will reach out to your buyer after closing and say, oh, by the way, we didn't get this form. So again, best practices, you take care of it in advance so your buyer is not contacted after the fact to provide something, which they're going to call you about anyway because they're not sure, right? So you're just alleviating that issue.
I'm sorry, which fee was like $188?
That's for the seller. They asked which fee is for the $188. That's for the seller when they're recording that 22U. And that's one time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's only the buyer fee that repeats with every new buyer. So if the septic system does not work, if there is a problem, if your client is wanting to get out of the contract due to an inoperable septic system, just know that there's a form for that. It's the 90Y. Very simple. It's the buyer's notice of termination based off of the septic addendum. Pursuant to the septic addendum, buyer hereby gives notice of disapproval of the septic inspection report and elects to terminate the agreement. Buyer demands the return of the earnest money. Now, it's one of those things that's a notice, right? So only the buyer is signing. It is not sufficient in and of itself to get back your client's earnest money. Like every other notice, you have the notice signed, and then you have to have the 50 signed, which is the disbursement of earnest money. And I'm sure Tay has mentioned this before, please do not confuse use of the 50 and the 51. The 50 is for the disbursement of earnest money, the 51 is the rescission. Escrow will say, I need a rescission. They're using incorrect terminology in our world. They're using the correct terminology for their world. So we utilize the 50 to get our earnest money dispersed. So you would provide the 90, you would send the 50, the seller would sign the 50 in agreement. That's how your client gets back their earnest money.
Is this like a normal inspection addendum where the buyer can walk even if there's not a problem, or can they only?
It's
get
based,
out?
no,
Okay.
it's not a free walk away.
Okay.
There has to actually be an issue. Now, what constitutes an issue?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not gonna get into what constitutes a legal way to get out. That
Right. Like a super minor problem that might be a small.
yeah, if you
fix.
tell me a baffle's broken, I don't know, so then we're gonna go for it. Yeah, kind of beyond my scope. Any other questions? Okay. There's also something interesting that came up that I didn't know about is for a very nominal fee, like $4 a month, we got this from our insurance guy, Bill Nelson, who was saying for $4 a month, you can buy an insurance policy in the event of septic issues or sewer backups. $4 a month. It's worth having that conversation with your client because honestly, something happens, it's gonna be pretty pricey to make those repairs. And if not pricey, just hiring a company to come and clean up is not gonna be pretty.
So that's just $4 for on-site sewer or for any kind of?
My understanding is it's a rider on the insurance policy, so for either one, for either sewer backups or for septic. Now, what it really covers, we would need to get the fine print from Bill on that, but it's worth mentioning it. If your client chooses not to do it, that's up to your client. But the fact that you have told them about this problem, if the problem then occurs, right? If you told them, they did it, wow, now you're the hero. If you told them and they didn't do it, they certainly can't blame you. That was easy, guys. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you for a question.
If you don't use these forms, does the county health still require you to have it inspected and pumped on the change of ownership?
Well, King County actually does require that it be certified on changing of ownership. Now, I don't know how you would do that without these forms. I guess, say parent to child might get around it. But even then, if you're representing someone, why would you want to?
But if you're in a bidding war?
I actually had an agent in Burien in a bidding war and with a seller saying, I'm not paying for this. So we simply noted on here that the buyer was going to pay for the inspection. Simple, took that problem away. And again, if you're representing a buyer, you certainly don't want them moving into a house that the septic doesn't work, right? I mean, can you imagine that telephone call? We'd all just not want to have it.
What are septic inspections going for these days?
Oh, good question. Honestly, the last time I looked at it, I think it was running, I think about $400 or $500.
About $500 for an inspection, and it's about $1,100 to pump and inspect.
And then if they have to do an as-built, it's even more.
Yeah.
So, oh, sorry, Bjorn, they were asking what the cost was for that. So to do an inspection is about $500, to do an inspection and pump, oh no, did I say that right? To do an inspection and a pump is about $1,000, but then to do an as-built could run you another $1,000 to $1,500.
What does that mean?
An as-built shows where the septic drain field and tank are on the property. And if you're taking a listing, it would be to your benefit to go onto the county's site. Most of these, you can look them up online to see if you're seeing it. Sometimes you have to send a request and they'll send it to you. But to see where the tank itself is located and where the drain field lines are. That's it.
Can you tell me, like, what are some common things that are gonna come up with a septic? You've talked to tons of agents that have issues with septic. What are the things that are common?
One of the biggest issues is baffles. That's probably the simplest and the biggest, and some are distribution. So the baffles, right, kind of allow things out and not come back, so it's a hygiene issue. So those, because it's a moving part, can often break and have to be repaired. Or also the distribution boxes. So there might be more than one tank, or the way the fluid is moving through the system, there is a distribution box, and those commonly go bad. But when they're inspecting, they're gonna pull these up and take a look at them. One of the interesting things is King County, if you have somebody who's talking about, I wanna buy a piece of land, King County's rule is 12,500 square feet, the lot has to be, before they will allow you to even consider a septic. Most of our septics here are gravity fed. However, we do allow for mound systems, which require a bit more put into them. They're a bit more expensive, but know that they are options. Also, interestingly enough, there are people out there who will try to tell your client, buy this chemical, put it in your septic system, and you'll be good to go. It's actually illegal in King County to buy chemicals and put them in your septic system. And in fact, the septic system is set up to work appropriately without chemical additives. So basically anything that goes through your body is what goes into the system, but they do recommend that you tell clients do not have garbage disposals, because we tend to utilize the garbage disposal and then food product goes down, and that's really not the way it should go into the system.
Does Barry have questions?
So we hire an OSM, right? And that's separate from a company that pumps and inspects, because I know there's companies that only inspect, and I know there's
No,
companies that
so
only
if
pump.
it's for a sale, you want to hire someone that is certified via King County, and this is true also of Pierce County. You can go online and you will have a list of names that these individuals are qualified and certified to inspect, and some of them also pump. So I think for most of your clients, it's probably beneficial to have one person come out and do both things, inspect it and then pump it, one business. But you have to make sure that the inspection portion is done by a certified inspector. So if John Smith is the guy who's always pumping for you, he may or may not be somebody who is certified for an actual sale.
I know I got surprised once when I found out that the number of bedrooms that are actual may not be the same as what it's approved for.
Correct, Biren, she's saying that the number of bedrooms may not be what the house is approved for. Yeah, that happens more times than we want to think. And having said that, if you're the listing agent, you can't list the house with 5 bedrooms if it's approved for a 3-bedroom septic. You have 3 bedrooms and 2 bonus rooms, or a den and an office, or whatever you want to make that be. You have to abide by whatever the septic is approved for. So thank you for pointing that out.
And there's no way, if it's approved for only 3 bedrooms, there's no way to bump it up by adding something on?
Not unless you have ability to increase that size of the tank, which means pull out the old tank and put in a new tank,
Right.
and increase the drain field. I don't know if any of you are aware, there was a house for sale out, it was east of Covington, and it was a beautiful home, beautiful. 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, craftsman style home, on the market for about $100,000. There's a problem, right? It's finished, it's lovely. Well, apparently during construction, the trucks that were there chose to park along the side of the house. When they went to go get the septic installed, they had compressed the earth to such a point that a septic system could not be installed.
Oh.
And I mean, I know I called, a number of agents were constantly calling the county to see if there was another way around this. And in this particular case, for whatever reason, a mound system wouldn't work, and I think that had to do with water nearby. But that particular house is now worthless unless you want to think of it as a really cool playhouse. So, just one more thing to be aware of. The ground has to
They
percolate.
couldn't dig the whole thing up and fluff it all up?
You know, you would think,
Or just
right?
like
Yeah.
replace it with
Well, fresh
rock
dirt.
and,
Well,
rock and
no
make it-
buyer at that point was willing to go through that work.
take
First
it out.
off, it's cash, right? And then on top of that, all of the work is cash. And at that particular point in time, I must have been the 150th agent who called, and nobody had been willing to take those steps to make that happen. I know, crazy.
I think a builder would do that.
You would think the original builder would do that, but instead they walked away. Any period?
We're good. We're good.
We're good. We're good. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you. I know it was quick, it was easy. We just need to remember the additional forms.
Thank you.